Creativity, a lost art in the anime community that seems to come and go as it pleases. In a world with oversaturated isekai and slice of life with random romance plots weighing it down, it becomes a challenge to get that fresh, exciting feeling of seeing the human mind doing what it does best, creating. And recently, we've had some great representations of that raw creativity that makes anime an art. It's bringing back that spark that made you get into it to begin with. But what exactly is creativity? Well, at its core, creativity is the ability to transcend traditional ideas, rules, or patterns and generate meaningful new forms of expression. Well, that's the boring definition. You can't really define creativity as just one thing because that would be a contradiction in itself. So to me, creativity in anime comes down to 4 subcategories, and the first one is freestyling. Now, freestyling as a form of creation can be a double-edged sword because most of the time when you freestyle, it can be sloppy, unorganized thoughts put together with no real direction. But when freestyling is flowing and meshing well together, you get a raw and unfiltered gem known as dandadan. And this is no over-exaggeration because dandadan's upbringing is what happens when freestyling beats focused creation. The author Yukinobu Tatsu was a mangaka who struggled for several years to get his work serialized and was frustrated with the failures he had to overcome. But then one day, his editor told him something that would change the trajectory of his mangaka career forever. He told him to just draw whatever he liked and let his imagination flow onto the paper and not to worry about the plot, and this led to what we know today, the beautiful and unique Shonen Jump manga that is flourishing in a state where anime desperately needs its unfiltered perspective. For a while, I thought this manga was just extremely weird due to the plot of the main characters, but came to find out it was just a guy doing what he thought was funny. The whole premise of Okarun losing his gems was just a bit that the author and his friend thought would be funny, and that's just him leaning into that freestyling side of creating. And I want to give him the benefit of the doubt for the perverted scenes with Momo and just assume there was shock value to bring in the audience and keep attention. But I think this is just an adult who wanted to portray what would have been funny to him as a teen. He was channeling that inner child that probably laughed at the absurd, found thrill in the supernatural, and saw no need to filter imagination through the lens of realism. And that's the heart of freestyling in anime. It's raw, chaotic, and sometimes it's the most human form of storytelling because it isn't about perfection. It's about capturing that feeling you had when you first drew something in the margins of your notebook or made up a ridiculous plotline in your head on a boring afternoon, staring into the abyss. It's not supposed to be polished, it's supposed to be real. And that's what dandadan represents. It's the essence of a creator letting go, just making what feels right in the moment. And surprisingly, that chaotic authenticity has struck a chord with fans who are tired of the recycled tropes and formulaic storytelling. Even some of the greats in the manga industry have indulged in freestyling once or twice. They just call it improvising. Like Toriyama, it was said he never had an actual direction for Z and would describe his writing process as making stuff up on the go. Like once it was speculated that he got confused by Super Saiyan 2 and made Super Saiyan 3 from that form. Not sure how true that is, but it wouldn't be too surprising considering how Goku achieved it. Same thing can be said for Asayama, who admitted to improvising some details of the ending, although he had already known how it would end. He felt conflicted and struggled to conclude it, and felt the best way to overcome that was with creative freedom, showing just how important freestyling is in the creation process. But freestyling is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to creativity in anime. The next form is innovation, or in better terms, revamp. This form is unorthodox because there's a huge misconception that creativity has to mean original. That is not the case. No matter how much you try to be 100% original, it's inevitable to have an overlap at some point. A great example of this is the copy and paste allegations about Black Clover and Naruto. Do they have many similarities that can be mirrored or characters that seem to be exact pairs? Yes, but that doesn't mean you can't be creative in the process, because creativity doesn't always come from inventing something new. It can also come from reimagining something that already exists and breathing new life into it. That's where revamping comes in. Black Clover is a perfect example of this because on the surface, it checks a lot of the familiar boxes. Loud underdog protagonist, rival with natural talent, childhood promises. We've seen it all before. But what makes Black Clover shine isn't that it's never been done before, it's how it's done. They took the familiar blueprint of shonen storytelling and made it sharper, faster, and in a more focused package. That's innovation. That's what anime like Black Clover and even Jujutsu Kaisen do so well. They don't pretend they invented the genre, they just reinvent how we experience it. The entire Curse energy system was inspired by Nen and Ki, but no one can honestly say that any of the 3 are similar enough to call it copying. That's the best way to build from inspiration. Put your own twist to it that makes it stand out. And to that point, in the oversaturated market of isekai right now, we can still have anime like Mushoku Tensei. He probably wasn't the first person to be reincarnated with full autonomy in all his memories, but this twist was unique enough to be considered the best because the author took a concept that is already well known, used it as a blueprint, then added his signature touch to it. And this form of creativity is arguably harder than being original because when you're working with something that's been done before, You're constantly fighting comparisons and constantly being told it's just like this show or just like another battle shonen. So to stand out in that environment takes a deep understanding of what came before and a vision to elevate it. For instance, you probably never heard of Aoashi or Inazuma 11. If you do, then you're part of a niche audience because these were two soccer anime that came before Blue Lock. But what Blue Lock was able to do to get over that hump was innovating an already established principle and drawing in an audience from that. Where traditional anime like Aoashi and Inazuma 11 focus on teamwork and unity, Blue Lock came in with a completely different perspective. They said, what if we took a sport that's globally beloved and reframed it through a lens of individualism and survival of the fittest? It kept the foundation of soccer intact, but completely restructured the narrative. And that's the genius of it. Blue Lock didn't invent soccer anime by any means. What they did was merge them and wrap it in an egotistical style that feels closer to the psyche of the average human mind. And now suddenly, you have people who never watched sports anime tuning in because Blue Lock didn't feel like a sports anime. It felt like something new, but it wasn't new. It was just newly arranged. That's the essence of creative revamp. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, just change how it moves. Which leads to the next form of creativity, which is originality. Originality in anime is unanimously known to be much better, when done correctly, than innovative work, simply because it catches you off guard and has zero expectations. When attempted to subvert industry standards, it becomes challenging because there's so much media that your ideation has most likely been done one way or another at some point. But there are always those rare instances where the premise has no parallels. To Be Hero X fits that description to a T. On the surface, it looks like a typical superhero show, but on a deeper level, it's much more heavier than that. Just the art style alone has to be a standout on its own. The 3D to 2D transitions is the first I've seen of its kind, and there's no issues like using one more than the other or bad CGI that would ruin a scene. It's all clean. But aside from just the presentation, To Be Hero X flourishes more through their story. The power system of having to win the public over in order to climb the hero ladder mirrors the corruption of the current real world. It brings light to how easily images can outweigh integrity in society. You don't need to be the strongest or the smartest. You just need to look good doing it and say the right things. It's constantly pulling back layers with just clever writing and strong execution. From the choreography and fighting choice of the heroes to the animation style of certain scenes, it all just makes sense. And that's the thing about originality. Not going off a formula or being predictable makes the anticipation to see what's next that much greater. Shows like this don't come around too often, and it's not because people lack the creative ability to be original. It's just that they won't want to take that risk of being different. It's easier to stick to what works than gamble on something completely unknown. But without risk, there is no reward. And the creator of gachiakuta, Ki Urana, understood that completely, which leads to the final piece of the creativity puzzle being authenticity. Gachiakuta is going to be the anime of the season for the same reason it became popular: stylistic art. The graffiti aspects of the anime gives it a competitive edge because it's a whole different vibe to it. With authenticity, it has to be undisputed of being from a specific origin. That's what this art style screams. Not only that, but the storyline being about trash is another authentic aspect because just like most stories that hit the hardest, the author has first-hand experience in it. Well, maybe not as extreme. Urana's own experience of breaking a cherished pen and crying over it heavily influenced the themes of valuing objects, trash or not. That might sound small, but that's what makes it real. It's not some grand overblown metaphor, it's simple and honest. And when you build a whole world around that feeling, it hits way harder than people expect. Gachiakuta doesn't feel like it's trying to impress anyone. It just is what it is. That's the authenticity. When something feels like it could have only come from one person, you don't question where it came from because the signatures are all over it. I wish there was more I could expand on in terms of her actual authentic touch, but I'm relatively new to her as well, so I can only speculate the success she will see with her work. And that's the last piece. Freestyling, revamping, being original, they're all just methods, but authenticity is what ties it all together. If it's not real to the creator, you'll easily feel that, and then it'll feel like a copy of a copy. But when it is real and it comes from an experience or something the creator actually cares about, you can tell instantly. That's what makes creativity in anime special, is people turning their personal inner chaos into something we can all connect to.